Welcome to Chalk Talk, a weekly preview of West Tennessee football featuring the Jackson Sun sports team on JacksonSun.com.
Hi everybody, it's week 8 of the high school football season here in West Tennessee. Welcome to Chalk Talk here at JacksonSun.com. My name is Craig Thomas, alongside the high school sports columnist Brandon Shields. We came off a huge week 7, which determined a lot, for the playoff pictures, and Brandon had an article about that earlier this week in the Jackson Sun. So if you haven't seen that, check out his assessing the regional outlooks and playoffs on JacksonSun.com. But now it's time to talk about week 8. We've got 4 games we're going to discuss here today. The first one involves the Northside Indians from right here in Jackson as they travel to Savannah to play Hardin County.
This week is nowhere near what last week's was, but there's still a few games around the area, and this one is head and shoulders above the rest. Hardin County and Northside have played every year, at least for the past decade, because they've been in the same region or district for most of those years. Last 2 years they weren't, but they still kept playing each other because they knew both were going to be good and give them a good game early in the year. So both teams are kind of expecting another good game this time around. Northside's been kind of faltering a little bit here and there with a couple of late game type, hate to use word collapses, but that was essentially what they were against Liberty and against in week 2, and then a couple weeks ago against Lexington. But last week they kind of pretty much surpassed just about everybody's expectations for them against Crockett County. Honestly, I thought Crockett County would win that game, but Northside won it and won it handily, 39-0. So they're playing good ball right now. Hardin County has been playing good ball all season. Some of their, they're coming in undefeated, but some of those games have been closer than kind of what you would expect. Had to come back to beat Haywood County last week. So I think everything's kind of pushing toward another close game between these two. They could come down to the wire, and Northside's fighting to kind of stay in that region championship conversation. They're a game back of them in Chester, of Hardin and Chester, in the standings. So they got a chance to kind of pull up into a tie this week. All
right. Hardin County, one of the teams left that's undefeated. Another team that's undefeated out of Medina, South Gibson, had a nice win over Southside, and try and do the same against Martin Westview team that took it on the chin against Liberty. How do you see this game playing out?
Well, historically, if these games aren't close, Westview usually wins by a lot because Westview usually has a more physical team. I'm not sure if that's the case this year, just because Westview doesn't bring in the size that they brought in the past years. We've talked about that a few times throughout the season on Chalk Talk, so I won't talk about that too much anymore. But South Gibson, I watched them last week for the first time. I was really impressed with their line play because they did a good job of pushing Southside around and opening up those lanes, mainly for Tyler Dysart, but Jordan Lambert, Dre McAllister, quarterback Austin Duncan, they all had a lot of rushing yards as well. So if they can continue to do that against Westview, South Gibson has a chance to stay undefeated after this week. Before the season, or even 2 or 3 weeks ago, I wasn't sure if it would happen, but after seeing them last week, I'm not saying I'm all in as a believer in them, but I'm not all in as a non-believer.
Yeah, well, they look like one of the top turnaround teams, at least to this point. When you look at a 2-8 team that's now still undefeated with just a few weeks left,
and they're winning the close games this year that they weren't last year. That was the difference. Last year is that they lost like 6 games by less than a touchdown.
Right. Yeah, the Trinity game I was at could have been one of those games, and they turned it into a win.
Right.
So I think you saw some progress right there. We shift to Chester County and Crockett County. You mentioned Crockett County coming off a surprisingly lopsided loss, I think, to Northside. Is this game against the Eagles an opportunity to bounce back?
It is. I mean, they're coming in with a 3-game losing streak, and they just looked pitiful in that loss last week. And definitely, they got a lot more pride than what they showed. And they know they're better than what they showed last week. They definitely know Northside's not 39 points better than them. And also, I said last week could be a trap game for Chester County because they might have been looking ahead to this big game and looking past one-win Dyer County. This could be another trap game for Chester County because, Crockett County is kind of reeling going into this game. Who does Chester County have next week? Assuming they both win this week, we got the 2 undefeateds in this region against each other, Hardin County and Chester County. So they could be, I talked with Malcolm Tippler earlier this week, the young man who's been the starting quarterback for Chester County the last 2 weeks, and I asked him about that. I said, "Is there any kind of danger for that?" He said, "No, sir. We're trying to just keep things one game at a time." And so far, they've been able to do that. Crockett County is going to have a bigger team, and it may be. Well, I don't want to say that. I was going to say maybe they're homecoming. It may not be, but it's a home game for them, and they're definitely going to be hyped up to try to put on a good show for their fans, their home crowd. So early in the first quarter is probably going to be a lot of emotion that Crockett County is playing with. So Chester County wants to try to weather that storm and just try to keep playing their kind of ball and keep Crockett County scoring low like they normally do.
Crockett County coming off a tough week, as we mentioned. Another team that's coming off a tough week is Trent Peabody. I was at this game as they hosted Dresden. I could have seen either team winning. I thought Peabody would probably win, but I could have seen Dresden maybe pulling one out. I was shocked, honestly, the way that game developed. I mean, not that just that Dresden won by a lot, but the fact that they completely controlled the entire thing. Peabody going up to Lake County this week. What do they need to do you think, to kind of sort of get things back on track?
Well, they just need to kind of, first off, in the first half, obviously you stop Stravinsky Wilkes, you stop Lake County. But Stravinsky's going to get his yards, and he's going to get a couple scores more than likely. So they just got to kind of make sure that they at least stay with them point-wise, if not stay ahead of them. Because then in the second half, the fact that they outnumber Lake County's players, at least as far as the roster goes, by almost triple. Peabody's got nearly 60 players, where Lake County has between 20 and 25. Honestly, that number fluctuates from week to week, depending on who you talk to. There's going to be that depth advantage there. Plus the fact that if you saw Thursday's paper and you saw JacksonSun.com on Wednesday afternoon, you know that the Golden Tide are going back with Kendrick Malone as their starting quarterback this week. That will definitely give them a little bit of help in the backfield to start the game out with.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit of a mental boost too, honestly, for those kids, knowing that he was their quarterback on that state championship team and quarterback through a lot of their success. So there's a handful of games we're going to be watching closely, but there'll be still some others to keep your eye on right here in the city. Jackson Christian has a game against Davidson Academy.
Yeah, there's only 2 games this week involving Jackson teams. Well, I guess the third if you count Sacred Heart, but as far as Lebanon TSSAA, only 2 games. And Jackson Christian's at home against Davidson Academy.
Yeah, so obviously a very, very big test for them. Make sure to stay with us throughout the week. We've had some pretty cool stories to feature on Malcolm Tipler that ran in Wednesday morning's paper, but check JacksonSun.com, check the paper every day. We'll have some good high school preview stuff. As always, you're used to it by now. Friday morning blitz with the preview capsules, the stats, to show who the leading playmakers have been at this point in West Tennessee. Friday night we'll have game coverage of a bunch of games, stories, photos, hopefully some video as well, and then Saturday morning a good solid recap of sort of the new picture for West Tennessee as we go into the weekend. With just a few weeks to go, so it starts getting serious. Start looking at the standings, start seeing who might be.
4 Fridays left in the regular season.
Yeah, so you start seeing who some playoff contenders might be. We thank you for joining us. We hope to see you out there at the games this week. Have a great week.
See you.